1. Presentation title: The Wild Duck and the Swan Song. Origin of Lee Horner, Lee Lightfoot and Lifeline. PhD graphic novel. Black Ship Books. Slides on YouTube. Ibsen, Shea, Gilligan, Marcus. All references here in novel itself. Flash fiction anthologies, prose, comics and graphic novels. My graphic novel, hybrid form, looks like meta non-fiction but influenced by meta-fiction. From psychoanalysis to pharmacology, with psychiatry in middle. Previous novel title and multi-level metaphor, names and lifeline, false personas. 2. Trigger warning, potentially harmful themes. Bereavement, trauma, mental illness in families, life writing and research obsessions, gaslighting by patriarchal science. Hazel Marcus, Jonathan Shea and Carol Gilligan. Approach exciting but dangerous, danger fed back into novel. Audience damaged by proxy, reader damaged by proxy, harm to participants, readers, characters and myself, meta loops, feedback, controversy of human beings transmitting mental illness to each other like a virus through stories, solved by genetics, Marcus as extending what Gilligan wrote about interdependence, providing the evidence Gilligan was criticised for lacking. Patriarchy denies interdependent identity, Shea on denial of death, need to grieve, grandfather's story, catharsis, Marcus on power of cultural stories. 3. Writing a graphic novel memoir, writing the lifeline. Stories, families, romantic relationships, intergenerational trauma, psychosis, internal character arcs. Lifeline constructed, unravelling lifeline, Wild Duck to the Swan Song, narrative signal of moral injury, Shea, Gilligan, takeaways, graphic novel, stroke, lifeline, thesis title, visual motif of black ellipse, poetic, technical meaning. Background on graphic novel memoir as genre, growing. Visual image as persona, universality of the lifeline, universality of moral injury and avoidance of death, narcissism and death in fiction, illustrations regarded as additive power, not lesser, vision as basis for reality, also deceptive, you freeze but fight or flee internally, problematic nature of the visual, unconscious reading of the body and power of story told via language, cultural and political point, carried in the mind or theme, people most threatened and victimised tend to end up behind bars. 4. Criticisms of graphic novels, words in graphic novel. Cliched content of graphic novel memoir, Mouse 1992, Chris Ware, Building Stories, Danielewski's House of Leaves, twist narrative, overt drama at forefront, build to subversion, Shea's moral injury, Swan Song, dramatic undoing of character. Graphic element, metaphor and huge potential of image, constructed gaze, writers can do equivalent of previous feminist critique of cinema. Novel, historical connection to comics and childhood, potentially unhealthy that so many movie adaptations have been from superhero genre. Metafiction, Grant Morrison, David Herman, hugely complex but explores language, thought and representation. My subject matter, weighty, the biggie, death, undoing of character. 5. Black and white inks on Bristol board, basics of plot and structure. Black and white aesthetic, multi-level metaphor. A3 size Bristol board, story, plot and structure. Internal, external arc, twist thesis. Fabula and sujet. Redacted life events come to surface. Shift reader and character perception. Edit itself carries its idea necessary lifeline, psychological shield, monomyth, missing first act. Writing ending, twist versus monomyth. Looking and acting, seen to be good or good at, storyteller, experiencing trauma, exaggeration of agency, twist to illness memoir, undermined agency, messianic agency. Act of writing black and white, mark making, writing and mark making survives the maker, father's job as barcode maker, necessity of editing out backstory, enables reader to do satisfying work, return to this with Danielewski, edit a psychological, amnesia, apostle of truth, Gregesh, psychiatrist, signals end of the lifeline, excavating redacted fabula, like therapy, monomyth, lifeline of secreted humility. For narrative reasons, this enables dramatic arc from weak to messianic. 6. Potential for the constructed gaze in the graphic novel. Constructed gaze of graphic novel difficult in prose. Beyond panels and bubbles, hypergraphia, looping graphics, meta-pathography, comparative meta-pathography, controlling story, Marbles, House of Leaves, ergodic, literally images of eyes, looking at people, documents, letters, photographs, scans, objects. Hypergraphia, private but immortalised. Diaries without reader, Marjorie Kemp, possibly first memoirist in English language and first psychiatric memoirist. Constructed gaze for split memory. Split screen, questioning conflict in memory. Gaslighting, alter sense of agency, where character's agency undermined in twisted narrative. Unsane, Before I Go to Sleep, The Girl on the Train. Gone Girl, outside of thriller genre. Gaslighting, good candidate for the ergodic and psychiatry. 7. How to construct the narrative representation of a life. Task of decoding non-trivial effort. Distinct structure, story, meme, oversimplification and edit, power of narcissistic ignorance, monochromatic simplicity of self-other, bereavement memoir, power of stories, last chapter, narcissism, 16 chapters, 4 themed parts, Cuckoo, Cuckoo's Clock, The Shameful Eye, Black Ellipse, Todorov, Last Act Reveals, PhD thesis. 8. Rhythmic musical chapter structure, pure text or pure imagery. House of Leaves, non-trivial, not confuse. Not Finnegan's Wake, structuring psychological life in 16 scenes. Come Back to Me, form of artifice, repeated, Come Back to Me, central. Rhythmic relation like House of Leaves, title page taken for granted in prose, used in marbles. Multi-level metaphor graphic. Autobio scene of central bereavement, Come Back to Me, part of twist. Psychotherapy scene, part of twist. Quotes as text breaks. Hoffman and reality, redacted document, metaphysical icons, hypergraphia, single-page scenes almost comedic but with serious point, describing reality. 9. Creative writing challenges, narrative conceit, flashbacks, meta-pathography, risk dry read, poetic dramatic imagery, beyond genre confines of memoir, 2020 and no face, chaos narrative versus restitution narrative, part 1, the despair tree, 2, peak experience. Surface tale backstory, geared towards making sister champion. Forehead tattoos, hypermemory, rewriting memory, one-way construct lifeline, chaos narrative. John Reed, large 193. Part 1, chaos. Part 2, process and construct lifeline. Part 3, crumbling of the lifeline. Part 4, exorcism, reveal. Flashbacks okay, because like Danielewski's structure, they reflect theme and psychology. Fracturing. Also, the brain state tattoos exploit the known power of the comics page to be simultaneous. Fiction for House of Leaves and Shameful Eye as something like autobiography, but madness as faulty reality could see footnote verification as same need as fiction, such as Danielewski's. 193 repeated. Part 1, 3 peak experiences. 10. Come Back to Me, 16 setups for one final payoff. Reveal, instruction from wife. Final meta, look over the shoulder. Goddess metanoia, contradicts I'm here. Call and response, multiple intellectual levels. Metanoia opposite of mindful non-duality, Come Back to Me. Separation from present, twist, being and origin of story. Les liaisons dangereuses, final letter, final PhD thesis. Hypermemory reveal, reason Thomas Machiavelli's art history or sacred history circulate, or track dozens of family members and pathological narratives told, often switching scapegoating strategies. Looping identity, Come Back to Me. Case studies of withdrawal from threat, lose contact with reality, dislocation from present. Danielewski, referencing Derrida, Labyrinth and the Center. Minotaur and Thread to Lead. Labyrinth of relation, infinite interpretation, hypermemory and intrusion of experience. Final PhD proposal explains collection of PhD proposals. Hypergraphia, novel, novel as therapy to cure metanoia. Strange attractors and the orbiting of death, sister, parent. Needs exorcism to escape loop of coping mechanism. Birthday card, one document as example of over 50 years of conditional love and passive aggressive control. We love you, but. 11. Illness narratives, psychotherapy and fiction. Discover task of writing illness memoir as PhD, life writing as psychotherapy, satisfy meta-pathography, research ethics committee, warnings from academic friends, life writing intrusive, PhD as therapy but harmful, horror of no face versus Zen-like serenity 220, collision non-fiction research, psychological horror genre, No Face consumes characters in backstory, 2020 runs counter-campaign, wounded storyteller naming the antagonist, Physical illness processed last years. Medical diagnosis, relief patient needs before treatment. Illness antagonist. Bad story as antagonist. Recurring themes. Psychotherapy, fictional works. Talking therapies, writing character arcs. Psychological exorcism, removing life lie. 2020 to no face, character inversion. Blacker lips becomes whiter lips in an eclipse reveal. Risk, once PhD revealed, can incorporate that risk into narrative. Trope in old folk tales of naming the antagonist. No face has no name. References Danielewski's House of Leaves. One model, both patient and protagonist remove potential trauma of either Shea, Gilligan, or Marcus's stories of the self. House in Babadook as trope of psychogeography, reflecting solipsism and trauma. Naming an internal agonist. Robert Whittaker, hugely respected and influential medical journalist, amazing excavation of the birth of multiple psychiatric stories, personally gaslighted by psychiatry and pharmaceutical industry. Meticulous scrutiny of how capitalism came to invade mental health treatment. Stories written by Big Pharma of conditions to meet needs of drugs, not drugs to meet needs of patients. Conditions created for appropriate product, then create need. 12. The Wild Duck and the Swan Song, the construction and destruction of the life lie. Swan Song, musical notes, medical professional. Sweet harmony, greater meaning of lyrics, harmful words become curative. Gregesh in Wild Duck, pain caused by truth-telling, illuminates why lie there. Eugene O'Neill's The Iceman Cometh, Arthur Miller's All My Sons. USA and its literary production, reference plays English literature class. Notes or silhouetted gymnast icon hovering in margins, childhood performance as life lie. Bronnie Ware Swan Song, confronted by death, lived false persona, returned to Gilligan in literature. Metaphors and analogies such as Yelmar's loft and Trump's tower's missing floors. Music as narrative substitute for words. Blistering array of bad stories after sister's death, including that of being hereditary and possibly being terminally ill. Left in air, never answered. No concern for impact of these bad stories, despite attending paramedic, needing counselling and eventually retirement. Complex nature of this act of singing, being act before and after act of cruelty. Music then playing over alcoholism. Life lie and US narcissism. Cultural peak with mystery of Trump. Iceman Cometh, All My Sons, countercultural, though later Death of the American Dream well-mined. Music and lyrics from Sweet Harmony meant very little in 93, now dramatic importance to novel. Gymnast icon as performance, Shea's Thumos and Life Lie. Bronnie Ware describes another Swan Song, being seen to be something, the shameful lie. Swan Song and gymnast silhouette, largely inversions, both results of each other. 13. Fantasyland, the expectation of others, being seen to be good or good at. Visual medium of graphic novel appealing. Relationship language looking and acting. Seen or seen to be acting. Ware's deathbed regret, metanoia bubble. Visual needs, shame and lack of shame, healthy narcissism. Unreliable narrators, performance, what is expected. Being seen, novel's title, being seen to be good at. Rise of Trump, giant cuckoo. USA, domains of narcissism. Fantasyland, Hazel Marcus, independence versus interdependence. Trumpian belief in individual agency versus mental paralysis. Shea v. Gilligan, moral regret. Character inauthenticity, science on secrets. One of last novels reveals being come back to me. Swan Song, PhD twist, novel as therapy. Fantasyland as madness. Delusions of moral purity and wealth, power. Expectation of others controlling stories. Myth of the rational actor who approaches everything objectively, indoctrinated into desiring the unique or the common object, the unique or the common self, inflation or denial of individual agency, Eton Primer, still domestic slavery in UK, Sergeant Atwell, Gilligan and Marcus, entire novels as explorations of resistance to the imposed life lie. I read in novel Marcus's psychological traits, see my experience and that of case study patients. Shea, origin of all our modern drama, desperate need for fictional catharsis of war in civilian life. Full circle with these original plays performed for military now. 14. Comparative metapathography case studies, interdependence and independence. Marcus, impact on cognition. Gilligan, Cartesian gaslighting, denial of emotions, body and interdependence. Scripts of power. Case studies, comparative metapathography, interdependence, independence. Catherine Penny's typical. Unperson in codependent families. Van Gogh, famous case study. Moritz Schreber's machines. Daniel Paul Schreber's delusions. Gilligan, children internalized life lie, denial of agency. Meta-narrative of shared experience, codependence in Marcus Gilligan and some of Shea's authorities, paranoia and income inequality as social statement in novel, Trump case study, Shea's Thumos triangulation of pride, rage and shame despair, the pride and rage to shield against shame, Catherine Penny, dark side of empathy, internalise other people's suffering, delusion in Buddhism, ask for help 3 times. That should be detachment. Cure is healthy. Detachment, no easy solution to lack of empathy and narcissism, and paralysing social paranoia of codependence. Catherine Penny's complete withdrawal into closed-eyed blindness of schizophrenia. Few specialists would do what Daniel Dorman did and build rapport and trust over multiple appointments in which the patient sits in total silence. Breakthrough being, reality can be painful. Quote, claustrophobic internalisation of parents' emotional need. 15. The sun's eclipse. Too much metaphor? Midpoint mirror flashbacks. False success mirrors real success. 2020 is exorcist. Black body eclipse. Black notes. Medical professional says blow to the head. 1993 sings song lyrics. 2020 describe Buddhist concepts. Last twist of novel PhD project. Narrative exposure therapy. No face comes through wall. Consumes multiple brain state selves. 2020 narrating the PhD research. Dyadic truth-telling conversations. 2020 sacrifices self. No face absorbed into patient. Walls of the room collapse. Patient addresses audience. Describes problem of metanoia. Being split away from present. Highlighted by come back to me bubble. Central life lies. That there is such a thing as a self. And that there is such a thing as truly free agency. 2 beliefs often fatal. Chapters, introspection, Zersey tongue, in morning, you are here, bar sinister, null hypothesis, chasing zero, pale fire, movie memoirs of a manic messiah, clock blocker, narcissista, asex breakdown, artifact, I am in a strange loop, punctum, the sun's eclipse, midpoint mirror flashbacks to time of 1999 eclipse, new age premillennial, Yalmar-like delusion. The room becomes site for the final conflict, expands and warps like Danielewski's house, old idea on frames, extreme peril of both not confronting life but also confronting it in a PhD and graphic novel simultaneously, more and more dissociative experiences removed from present. Possibility of growing, come back to me font, at peak of psychological crisis becomes a black ellipse itself. Brain hacking in 2015, left hemisphere projects and a year without negative thoughts, but obsessively goal-oriented and disconnected from family life, completely false self.